It can be really difficult to recognise and understand composition in artwork, so in this video I'm going to show you how watching movies can improve your drawing composition. Let's begin by looking at some basic composition techniques. Symmetry is when an image is reflected in the axis. This could be the y-axis, the x-axis, or even a diagonal axis. Asymmetry is the lack of symmetry. The image isn't reflected in the axis, however usually it is still balanced. In this example, the two smaller black rectangles equate to the same mass as the larger square. So although the image isn't reflected, there is an equal mass on both sides of the image. You could have a seemingly symmetrical image, but by changing one element of that, for example by its colour, you can create an asymmetrical image. The next composition technique is the rule of thirds. Imagine a grid has been placed over your image, splitting it into equal thirds vertically and horizontally. The idea is to place your focal points on these grid lines, with any key elements on the intersect of these lines. The rule of thirds is often used in landscapes, where the horizon line is placed on one of the horizontal grid lines. Let's say here the white rectangle represents our subject and the white circle represents the sun. You want to be careful that if you were to move the horizon line up to the higher grid line, then that would be intersecting the head of the subject and therefore not creating a pleasing image, which would mean that you'd need to move your subject accordingly. The third compositional technique are leading lines. This is when lines in the environment guide the eye towards the focal point. Often this is used in urban environments with one-point perspective, but not exclusively. The image doesn't need to be symmetrical either. The lines don't even need to be obvious or straight. They could be anything from the environment that guides the eye towards the focal point. The final composition technique we're going to talk about is framing. Framing is when the subject is enclosed within its surroundings. Often in film, they use a shallow depth of field to shoot through objects to frame the subject. There are the four main basic compositional techniques which we'll come back to later on. Imagine you're in an art gallery and you're watching the people look at the artwork, admiring its beauty. What do? They get up close to the painting. They're not thinking about the composition, especially when they're so close. They're looking at the specific details, the brushstrokes, the texture, or even a specific element which a painting is famous for. It's difficult to recognise the composition, especially when there are many disagreements on the composition of an image. Particularly if the painting is well known or a large scale piece, people can't help but focus in on the small elements that perhaps the artist has left. However, this is counterintuitive. To understand and recognise composition, you need to look generally at the whole piece. In film, it's a lot easier to recognise these patterns and compositions. When you watch a film, you're a set distance away. You're not up close, you can see the whole screen. People have short attention spans, so shots are constantly changing. They're not static like a painting. This forces us to look generally at the shot because we don't have the time to hone into specific details. Research has been done that we trust film and photographs more than artwork. Art can take creative liberties, different styles. There's no way of knowing exactly how accurate a painting is. And although film can take creative liberties, we see real people doing real actions. It had to have been shot. So even if they're in outer space on some alien planet, we still believe it. Despite living in a world with fake news where anyone can digitally enhance or manipulate an image, we still believe it. Even if we're told it's fake, we can still forget. So it's apparent that we trust movies more because of their realism. Let's use an analogy. Here is Vermeer's Girl Reading a Letter at an Open Window. If you were to take your friend who knows nothing about art and ask them, what has the artist done that is compositionally effective? They'd probably struggle to answer. Whereas if you were to show them this shot from 2001 A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick, although they won't know the technical terms, they'd probably say something like, they used lines. I know what you're thinking. Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey is known for its distinctive composition. So let's look at another movie where the composition isn't as exaggerated but is still very much present. 2019's Best Picture winner, Parasite, by Bong Joon-ho, uses beautiful composition but without it being exaggerated to Wes Anderson's level. Let's take this shot. Framing has been used. You can split the image into rectangles, getting smaller and smaller, guiding attention towards the subject. So let's take another look at the painting. The same can be done. I would say it was a lot easier to spot that in the film than it was in the painting. Now I want to show you an example using moving footage from a film. I'm going to be using a 40-second clip from Us by Jordan Peele. I actually have a video where this film features on a list of 13 inspiring movies that all artists should watch. All of these films also have stunning composition. So if you want to check this video out, I'll leave a link in the description below, or you can click the card above. So let's break down this 40-second sequence using the basic composition techniques that we learned earlier. This first shot uses leading lines through the desks and the blackboard to lead the eye towards the subject, as well as symmetry with a slight asymmetrical detail with the bump in the chalk drawings on the right to add visual interest. In this tracking shot, framing is used by shooting through the rabbits and the chair legs to bring attention to this character who is sneaking up on the other. We switch back to the other character, where leading lines are used to guide the eye towards the character's feet, highlighting the falling paper cuttings. The feet and the cuttings have been framed within the doorway to also bring further attention. This next shot is very visually striking for its use of asymmetry. The extreme close-up is balanced by the wide shot, which uses symmetry in the desks and cages to create an overall balanced frame. This shot is very obvious in its use of leading lines and symmetry to create a very visually pleasing image. This final shot links back to the example I showed you at the beginning. Overall, the image seems symmetrical. However, the use of the black rabbit draws our attention to it using an asymmetrical detail. This creates a much more visually striking and interesting image. After all, composition is meant to be used to create interest and intrigue to help guide the story forward. Hopefully you can see that these shots used a lot of compositional techniques that you could incorporate into your drawing, whether you're a landscape or a portrait artist. So when you watch an episode of your favourite TV show or a film, you'll be surprised at the amount of compositional inspiration you could use in your own artwork. As artists, we tend to focus so much on being accurate with our drawing. So next time you get out your sketchbook or paper, think about the composition before spending ages getting your drawing just right and realising you've just drawn it in the middle of a blank page. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please subscribe for weekly art, photography and film videos every Sunday, and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it too. Make sure to leave a comment with any films that you think have good composition that others can learn from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.